Welcome to the Post Shift Podcast, your raw look at the hospitality industry, brought to you by SHC. What has happened, Post Shifters? Welcome to another episode of the Post Shift Podcast. Well, another episode. It's the brand new season, the brand new podcast, Post Shift Podcast 2.0. I didn't sleep last night, literally at all, because I was nervous about this. And literally just now in the green room, I said to Sean Finter, who I'm going to have on the show today, that I wasn't going to live stream it. Then I was like, I said, start streaming. And then it was like, do you sure you want to do it this way? And I'm like, nope, I'm going to stream to all the platforms that I've said that I'm not going to stream to. So Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, you can check it out there. I do have a chat section too. So if you make a comment on the video, it can come through to Sean and I as we chat. The reason why I wanted Sean Finter on this new season, I think I'm season 6. This is season 6, episode 2. Is he was a real big driver after Tails for me to get back into the podcast. And I've it's been one of those interesting little things that I've talked about a little bit on my social media. I've been in a weird headspace for about 6 months. And so I've been trying to get my ducks in a row, and I've realized that I've still got fuel in the tank and I still want to be engaging in the industry and sort of not rest on my laurels. And so I put out a couple of videos about my cup not being full. So I'm hoping this is going to be the thing that helps fill it back up. So yeah, Sean, I did Sean's seminar. I didn't do too many seminars at Tails, but Sean's seminar really got me, and it made me see that I still have some opinions that matter in the industry as well. And so I had to have him on the show for the very first episode. So I'll introduce Sean right here. Thank you for joining me, buddy. I really appreciate it.
Hey, I'm delighted to be here, and I'm glad you're back.
Yeah, I've already. My wife last night, she's like, "Oh, what are you doing tomorrow?" I was like, "I got to be up early. I've got a podcast at 10 o'clock." She's like, "What do you mean you got a podcast at 10 o'clock? You decided 2 days ago that you're going to start the podcast again." I'm like, "Yeah, 2 days ago. That's 48 hours. That's a lot to think about and do in 48 hours." And so, as you can see, I've moved back into my old office. I actually gave up my office to my daughter for her 13th birthday. That lasted about 3 weeks before she didn't want to do anything in here anymore. So now I'm moving back into my own space again so that I can start doing this sort of thing. So thanks so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it. You've been on the show before, but can you explain to everybody who may not have crossed paths with you how you got to the stage in your career now, and where did you come from? And you know, the usual elevator pitch. Who is Sean Finter?
Yeah. Okay. Canadian. I was born north of Toronto and started in bars and restaurants when I was 12 years old at a truck stop. And it changed my life. You know, I can honestly say I fell in love with the industry. Washing dishes might have been one of the best jobs I've ever had. And when all my friends went off to college, I didn't qualify. I really struggled in school, didn't finish high school. So I went to London and really doubled down on bartending and got into management, and got picked up by a small consulting company, which again changed my worldview and really gave me a lot to believe in myself, and decided that, you know, the path was bartender, bar manager, bar owner. I spent a lot of time today teaching people you don't have to do that. I became a bar and restaurant owner in Sydney, Australia. I had 8 properties, did well, made a lot of money, but it never really clicked with me. It never really made me happy. I didn't realize that, like, some people are really born for it. They have the DNA of a restaurant owner. I don't have patience. I like to build things. I like to launch them. I don't necessarily like to nurture them and run them. So after 6 years of that, I sold my group and kind of semi-retired, but decided at 32 years old, I was too young to retire, and decided that I wanted to help 10 other people, avoid the mistakes that I made with my mental health and my physical health, and learn some of the things that I had learned. 10 clients turned into 100, 100 turned into 10,000, and I sold that business about a year and a half ago now, a company called Barmetrics that I started way back in 2000. And now I just exclusively coach. I coach people that are looking to, some are looking to exit, so they want to increase the value of their business and systematize it. Other people are looking to level up, and others, again, are looking to become outliers in the industry, kind of perform at 10 times the industry average, and live a very different life than they had been before. So that's what I do, and that's how I got here, and I love it.
What do you think the major challenges are in the hospitality space right now, business wise? Like at your seminar, you mentioned a few things, and I think you've posted a few things about the economy of scale and how the economy in the general world right now is affecting the bar industry. How are you seeing that change for a lot of hospitality businesses?
Yeah, well, the economy is an interesting place to start. You know, with my clients, I really don't engage with them in conversations about the economy. They tell me how tough things are in Romania, in Los Angeles, in Sydney, and I'm like, you know, if you only need 5,000 customers and 50 staff, like you're not in control of the economy. But you know,
Mm-hmm.
if you're a great employer, you'll attract 50 great staff, and if you're a great operator, you're going to attract 5,000 great customers. So I think that's a challenge. You know, a lot of operators that I meet, they had an idea for their concept when they launched, and they really diluted it. You know, they got some arbitrary negative feedback here and there from people who were never their ideal clients, and they've watered down their offer so much that it's no longer for anybody anymore. And not only the offer got watered down, their company culture got watered down. So I really encourage people to be bold. You know, I don't mind getting criticism and negative feedback, especially if it's not from my target demographic. And, you know, if you really triple down on being a great employer and doing for others what others did for me and changed my life, you know, taught me about business, taught me to believe in myself, taught me how to sell, taught me how to market, taught me how to operate, you know, the economy is not going to be your challenge. It's just stay in your pocket and ignore the economy and perform.
So you've got a concept called Napkinomics, and that really got into how do you gauge your staff, how do you gauge your customers. With Napkinomics, how do you sort of suggest a lot of businesses to build their client base? You were just talking about like you get a little bit of negative feedback, so you go, okay, well, we're going to take that little portion of the business, change that
Right.
to make this one person happy that on a Google review or a Yelp review said something. How do you build? What do you call them? You call them they're not ravers. What are they called? Like
Uh,
your loyal guests,
raving fans.
raving fans.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you suggest a lot of businesses build that?
Yeah. So, you know, I think the classic mistake is, and I've been the operator who's made this mistake, so I can speak firsthand, is that you get busy and you kind of talk and act past your staff, right? You're trying to direct the interaction with the guest. You're trying to market differently. You're trying to sell differently. And instead of really tripling down on your staff and realizing that that is your business, right? If you take care of them, if you educate them, if you empower them, they're going to take care of your guests and everything's going to work out. But once you go past them, you know, you're lost. Napkinomics is a single page, and you can put it in the resources section, Sean, if you like, and I encourage everyone to use it. You take a single piece of paper and you put it down in front of any of your staff, especially front of house staff who have been with you for 6 months or longer, and ask them to fill it out. And it's all the basics of your business. You know, how do you win at business? How does a bar or restaurant actually win? They have a box to draw you a picture of how you win or write 10 words on how you win. The theory there is if you don't have a strategy on how you win, you have no chance of winning. You could also look at, you know, the values of the company. This is the compass that they're using to make decisions on your behalf on a daily basis. There's another box that asks you, what do our guests really love? Like the things that they really rave about, and what are the things that they hate? And then there's about 8 boxes on the page. I warn you, if you're an owner or operator, to be seated when you line the pages up next to them. No one's going to say the same thing. Everyone's all over the place. And that is the value of your brand. I don't care how much an owner or an operator knows about the industry, how much experience they have. The only thing that matters is what that 25-year-old bartender knows and is able to execute on when the bar's 3 deep. And this page is going to show you exactly what they know and what they don't know. And then you can work systematically to close the gap. And I can tell you this, it always works, right? If you take a bunch of 6-year-old kids who have never seen a soccer ball before and said, go play, do your best, right? The golden rule, they're going to run around and bump into each other. If you sit down and explain, this is your goal, you got to keep balls out. This is the opposing goal. You got to get balls in. You got to stay in these lines. You got to pass to each other and kick the ball across the goal. You're going to have a fundamentally different game in front of you, right? And you have a chance of winning.
I found it weird because during the pre-pandemic, the industry's always been turn and burn. Like I know that you've talked about it. I try and talk like the 10 years that I have in my team at Clive's right now. On average, all of my team's been with me for like 2.5 years. Like I've got some really like out of my whole team, I've had like 18% turnover. Pre-pandemic was always like that. Get someone in, train them for 2 days, put them on the floor, bang them out, and turn and burn through staff, like a lot of big pubs and stuff like that. And then when the pandemic hit, everybody's like, you know what? I'm going to change the way I lead my team. I'm going to change the way I hire. I'm going to change the way I train. And then 6 months after the pandemic was over, a lot of places just went back to the turn and burn. Do you think that the fundamental of reframing how we see stuff? Like, I've even had conversations with other clients and my own people at the hotel, like investing in actual certification courses. They were like, why are we spending this much money on training when they're probably going to just leave fairly shortly anyway? But on the flip side, I've had team for 4 years, 3 years, 4 years working with me. Do you think that leadership needs to be changed from the top down? Owners need to start thinking about it differently. Managers need to start thinking about it differently.
I do. And what I'm about to say next applies to me as well, that, we all want better teams and better outcomes, but very rarely are we willing to really look at ourselves and assess ourselves and get some unbiased feedback about our own performance, our level of care for our staff, our intention. Do your staff really believe you want them to be better human beings, better equipped to take on the world, or do they just want a pound of flesh and pay you minimum wage and push you out the door when the shift's over? So I think, there's Gallup has an incredible, one of my favorite survey tools. It's a one-page tool. It has 12 questions only, and they're all yes or no, and it's called the Q12. And the first question on it is, I know what's expected of me at work. Right? As simple as that. You'd be surprised how many people don't know what's expected, because if Michael's managing, it's one thing, and if Sarah's managing, it's another. I have the tools to do my job properly every shift. My manager seems to care about me as a person, right? All these sorts of questions. And that's a great place to start. It's really a measure on your leadership team. And if your team doesn't believe that your leaders believe in them and want to invest in them and want the best for them, you're already at a point of contention between you and your staff. What could you possibly expect between your staff and your guests, right? The magic in hospitality is a discretionary effort that your staff deliver to your guests, right? That extra kindness, sharing a little bit about themselves, taking a chance to open themselves up as a person to a group of perfect strangers so that they might open up with each other, right? You can't mandate that. But if you're caring about your team and they feel it and they believe it, they're going to care about your guests. And you've got this beautiful cycle. So that Q12 will show you 12 different areas that you can build trust, respect, and really gain some traction with your team.
I'm going to throw that in, everybody who's listening, or I'll throw that in the description, and I'll get all the links and everything from Sean so you can download those. We've both been in the industry for a fair while. As you said, you look younger than I do, so we've both been doing this long enough. With the industry always sort of changing, do you look at trends and see how that can be applied to the people that you coach? Or do you tend to feel like we've already sort of got that sort of understand that you've got a very structured system in place, that economy doesn't affect that if you're focusing on these things? Do you think that trends in the industry, obviously through the pandemic, there was takeout and a whole bunch of other new trends that sort of hit the market. Do you stick with trends and sort of like evaluate them and then fold them in or push them out?
I've got to admit, I'm not a very trendy guy in any sense of the word, fashion or new industry trends. And, and what I believe in our industry, in the hospitality industry, is what always wins the day is just old school hospitality, focus, and attention. You mentioned how old we are, Sean, and you're right. We're getting old. I'm old enough to remember driving home from school one day. My dad picked me up at school, and on our way home, we stopped at a gas station, and we got the local download from the gas station attendant, right? A kid that lived in town and talked to us, and we went from there to the bank where my dad talked to people there, interacted there. We went from there to the butcher shop. Again, got more local information, had some last sports and all of that. We picked up a movie, and we got our movie recommendations from a woman that worked at the store there. We think about that drive home from work now, people that either work from home isolated or work in a cubicle at work, no contact. The only social interaction they have is social media, which isn't real social contact. And they drive home. They don't stop at any of those places. If they get gas, they pump it themselves and get back in their car. And they go home, and the people that I know, they go home, their kids ignore them. Their wife or husband ignores them. So I think bars and restaurants are the last place that you can be guaranteed to get in your car or walk down the street and talk to a human being, right? Be seen and recognized and hopefully respected and cared for, and at best, admired, loved, right? This is the opportunity we have. And I think with technology today, and I see pubs, I was just in a pub in Texas where both of the bartenders were on their phones while there's people waiting at the bar, right? And nothing says you're not important to me. This is most important, even though I'm being paid to review, and make you feel this big and frustrated that you're not with your friends behind you. So I think in tripling down on the basics, on old school human connection, level 3 conversation. Level 1 is news, sports, and weather. Level 2 is getting a little bit deeper. And level 3, we use the acronym FORD: family, occupation, recreation, and dreams, right? If you're talking about any of those 4 things, you're talking about the things that matter to the person in front of you, and you're in a real conversation and you're building real business.
Yeah, it's one of my pet peeves when I travel. Like, I'm usually traveling by myself, like for business. I'm sure you do the same thing. And you sit at the bar by yourself. So you're a single person at the bar by yourself, and obviously you're going to go through menus, you're going to be looking around, you're going to be checking out the spirit list, the cocktail menu, have a cocktail, and then you don't get a who, what, why, where, how from the bartender. You don't get those simple, like, hey, what you doing in town? And I even remind my team, like, if it's a Tuesday night and there's a single person sitting at the bar and they're just looking at the menu or checking out the room, ask them what they're doing in town, especially in a hotel bar. It's one of my biggest pet peeves.
Yeah.
Biggest pet peeves.
Yeah. Well, it's a good point, Dean, and I suggest to the audience you think about your, all the different constituencies, the different types of guests that you have to come in. So if you do have people like Dean and I, because I travel by myself and sitting at the bar, it's kind of lonely, and you do want someone to talk to. What I work on with my clients is setting up different playbooks for different constituencies. So, for example, with people like us, kind of sitting at the bar, business travelers, to engage them on their level. First, be interested, and then you can be interesting to that person. So asking them where they're from, what they do, and then tying that to something personal, saying, hey, well, I've never been to Vancouver Island. Like, what do you love to do there? Or you mentioned that you have kids. What do you love to do there with your daughter? Right now you're in someone's space, having a real conversation. Another exercise that we did, and every bar should do this. If you're proud of your city, you have one piece of paper that's behind the bar. And I do love old school, here's something I wrote for you, rather than sending them a message digitally. We have one piece of paper, and we ask all of our staff, write down 2 things off the beaten path in our town that aren't going to show up on the Google searches and lists and everything else that you would recommend for someone to do. Then we take the best of, and we write that person's name beside it. And then when I'm listening to someone who's been sitting at the bar for 45 minutes with me, I say, hey, Sean, have you got a second before you go? Yeah, sure. I bring the page over. I bring one of these multicolor pens over, and I circle my 3 favorites. And I say, you said you only got half a day here left tomorrow. You should check out one of these 3 things here. Based on what we talked about today, this venue here, this is the guy's name who will be on the door, whatever. Here's the most beautiful place to take a picture in town that you're not going to see show up online. Here's a restaurant that has something that's so unique to Vancouver and Canada. You got to go check this out. I mean, that is a repeat customer for life every time they're back in your city. And they're likely to tell 10, 20, 50 people about it. Just a simple playbook for every constituency.
Yeah. We actually have a postcard as our billfold. So the team and I got together and we did a cocktail crawl. So it's all the cocktail bars in Victoria. Yeah. So when people sit down, they actually can take that with them and like go on a little cocktail crawl. Or if they fill it out, and we'll mail it. So we mail out a dozen to 2 dozen postcards a week. And so then that cocktail crawl is getting sent to somewhere else for when they visit. And so we've sort of nailed that down to be like, hey, you got to go here and check out this. And even when people sit at the bar and they're like, oh, we're only here for one night, and they're on their like second cocktail or third cocktail, I'm like, listen, I'd love for you to sit with me all night long and have cocktails. But if you're only here for one night, you've got to go see our pals down at Humboldt. You got to go across the street and go see Citrus and Cane. You can't, I'd love you to sit here, but like you're here for one night from Portland, Seattle, San Francisco, wherever, you got to I'm going to kick you out. I'm going to bill you up and you got to go see our friends.
I love it. I love it, man. And that extra touch of, jotting something down there, you got to try the X. I was at a place in California recently, and the bar manager came over and he says, oh, I've been in one of your sessions before. I want to show you something. So he's got the page and he brings it out. And he wrote on it, he said, I know you like certain types of fish. He heard me say it somewhere before. And he said, they have this pickled herring there. And he said, if you don't like it, I'm going to buy you dinner next time you're in town. It wasn't even his place. He just said, you have to go there and ask for, David Smith, the bartender, whatever else, and order this pick. I mean, it was unbelievable. I should have told him I didn't like it just to get the dinner, but I couldn't.
Pickled herring and some akavit always hits the spot.
Yeah.
When you first sit down with a new client, how do you sort of help them compartmentalize what is 100% necessary to deal with today and what you can deal with in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months? And I know that you've said as well, like we've talked about a few systems that you have done, Napkinomics and that sort of thing, and you suggest once a quarter, once every 6 months to reevaluate everything you've done, see how things have shifted, new staff come in, that sort of thing. So when you sit down with a client for the first time, how do you compartmentalize for them? Because I think operating a business is always hectic. It's chaos. It's controlled chaos to a degree, but sometimes you're like, might be something completely trivial to you is the one thing that you need to deal with today to take that next step.
Yeah, well, this is an area that I've learned a lot about and grown in, because I, to be honest, I used to make a lot of mistakes with clients because I was very excited, very passionate. I know what I'm capable of, and I'm a pretty good judge of what other people might be capable of. But what I wasn't in tune with was like what their bandwidth is, right? Like, I don't care what you're capable of. If you're running at 110%, you're overloaded. Your bar is in trouble, your marriage is in trouble. Like, it's not a good idea to kick off a big project. So for me, it's all about momentum. Where can we get even a small win in the beginning? Because even if the ownership team and even if the leadership team's bought in, you need everyone bought in to change and growth, right? If you're at a place that's struggling, it kind of sucks to begin with. And then here's this guy that wants us to do more, and when we don't have any bandwidth. So I work with them to identify what their biggest challenge are. We have a quick audit that we do and say, all right, here's where I see your strengths. Here's where you could do with some work. And here's some big holes in the business. And then I'll encourage them. I'll pick 2 or 3 places where I think they can get a pretty quick win. And once we get some momentum, we typically move into either 3 projects a year or 4 projects a year. So every trimester or every quarter, we'll do a new project. And ideally, that project's going to end several weeks before the end of the period so that they get time. They're not always working on the business. And what I like to do is to do projects that could involve as many people as possible so that they're going to get the benefit, but they also get the buy-in because they're doing the work. And sometimes they get an incentive to do it too, whether it be education, whether it be bonuses, whatever it might be. But the key is to get momentum, start with something where you can get a win, and build, and the challenge should get progressively more difficult as you go, and then you work back through the cycle again.
That's one thing that I was really not surprised, but I always try back getting your staff to have some ownership and some tangible thing. Your KPI and your KPI / bonus structure that you showed in that seminar at Tails. It's something that I try to live by. Obviously, a lot of ownership doesn't see it that way. How do you see having your staff, especially your management and your leadership group outside your ownership group, buying into your business, your mantras, that sort of thing, through KPIs and bonus structure like that?
Yeah. So, deciding what to do first and what to do next. As I mentioned, you have to do things that are going to get momentum. But ideally, you have to do things that are going to benefit a subgroup inside of your business, or at very least alleviate some of the pain that's there, right? If you start with selfless actions in the business and say, hey, we want it to be better here. We want it to be smoother, to be a better place to work. That's always healthy. And I think inside of that, where you have a team of people that is waiting for evidence that this is going to be worth it. Right. And as a coach, a lot of what I do is documentation. You have to prove to people that this is moving the needle, and you have to measure different things than what they've measured before. So, for example, in order to get great staff, A players into your business, you have to be great at marketing your business. And so my company's measured qualified applicants per vacancy, per department. right? So when I sold the company in the beginning, it was almost 1-to-1, right? Oh, a good person, let's hire them, let's put them in. When we sold, we were over 20 qualified applicants. So these are people we would consider hiring, like they tick all the boxes, over 20 people to choose from. You're suddenly in a whole different employment market when that's happening. And you're doing an awful lot right to begin with, and the word's getting out there about what you're doing. So, we always look to, set up our bar programs where, we measure peak hour blocks. So a typical bar, for example, does 80% of their business and 20% of their hours of operation. And those 20%, that usually works out to about 12 to 16 hours a week. That's it. That's your business. That's what you spent millions of dollars on to get a dozen hours a week to perform. And what we do is come in and measure the output per team, per unit that's doing that, and identify the revenue ceiling, which means that once the bar is too deep, it doesn't matter if I bring in 5 great greyhounds worth of people. No more drinks can go across the bar. And then we look to increase that revenue ceiling by 20%. When you do that, a couple of things happen. Number one, the typical business doubles their profit. Number two, the team that's getting it out of the tip pool is now getting 20% more tips. And number three, as you bring the apex up this way, you move it this way as well. Because people we're attracted to the buzz, to the humming of a perfectly busy bar. We don't want it to be quiet because then we feel awkward. We don't want it to be packed because we can't get anything. So if you can keep in that pocket longer, people come earlier and they stay later. So, we believe that you can't measure or you can't improve what you can't measure. So measure the right things, install the system, and then go after it and continue to measure, and you'll get the results.
Do you think ownership transparency is something that needs to be worked on? I find I've worked with a lot of ownership in the past, and they'll keep the cards to their chest, like whether they're doing well. And this is from their management team as well, like sales, revenue, bottom line, everything. Do you think the transparency helps breed, especially in the management team, that ownership and like, okay, no, I know what the goal is. Like I find a lot of them just, as you said, like come to work and they don't really know what their job role is. But
Right.
I've had ownerships just not even show you top line revenue, and you're just like, well, I don't even know what I'm doing right now.
Right. So I'll up front, I'll make the distinction between ownership and leadership. Right. I've worked with clients that did not have a great ownership team. They had a great leadership team, and therefore they had a great business. And I've worked for clients that have wonderful ownership, poor leadership, and they have a poor business. Right. The saying goes that people quit people don't quit jobs. Right. A job's just the thing. You work for a human being, and if they show you respect, invest in you, and help you grow, you're 10 times more likely to stick around. And to your point about transparency, yeah, put it this way. I work with a lot of companies. I've coached myself around 450 different owners and senior managers, and their instinct is, it's interesting. If they're doing really well, they don't want anyone to know. If they're doing really poorly, they don't want anyone to know. I'm a curious guy, so I said, okay, you're doing really well. Why don't you want anyone to know? And they said, well, I think people are going to start to steal things. They're going to give away product and everything. I said, do you think Elon Musk has any problem with staplers missing or chairs going out the back door to his office? No. People want to work for someone who's successful. Now, if you're super successful and greedy and have them compromised, then you've got a problem. But on the other end of the spectrum where people aren't doing well, I said, if you're working at a bar and no one tells you what's going on and you're acting a certain way, maybe a little bit cavalier and careless with someone's business and money and reputation, and no one says anything, you just keep doing what you're doing. But if you've hired good people and you come to them and say, hey guys, we're struggling right now. And this is not your problem, but it's mine to fix. And I'm going to show you the books and show you that we're losing money at the moment and we can turn it around. I know we can. Here's what we need to do. For the owner, I've seen dozens of owners have that meeting, and almost every time you're going to have staff say, we got you. We're in this. They see you fighting for yourself. They're going to fight for themselves or fight for the company, and you go. So I think transparency almost always wins. And where it doesn't and people turn on you, I think you've won anyways, right? You, at least now you know who's on your team and you've got a chance to get a new team in. So yeah, I'm all for transparency.
So let's just chat about a couple of courses that you do at the Franklin House. The Franklin House is your beautiful, beautiful house down in Maryland.
Annapolis,
Yeah,
Maryland. Right.
Maryland. Yeah. So you do the how to become an outlier. Can you explain what do you see as a definition for an outlier in the hospitality industry?
Well, I'll give you a specific example. So, we talked earlier about people saying, "Oh, the market's turning, and it's hard to get good people," and all of these things. And uh, a guy who I've worked with for years, and I really, really respect, said Moses. He changed the name of his company from 213 Group, which is LA's area code, and now that he's like in Texas and New York and elsewhere, they changed the company name to Pouring with Heart. And said at the moment has around 500 members on his team. And he believes very strongly that he and his team have created 500 careers. And Said's team was a lot like my team. I think it's partly why we get along so well. Like my team in Sydney, I used to hire people that had tattoos on their neck before it was cool, right? And a lot of people, like I could give you specific examples of like their dads gave up on them. Their teachers told them they were going to be losers, total misfits like I was when I was younger. And Said's hired these people and got them to buy into investing in themselves and growing. He's taken people from bar back to CEO of his company inside the same cycle. And, with Said right now, he is expanding. He wants to go from 500 careers to 2,030 careers by 2030, right? Pretty aggressive growth. And he's expanding into markets that in some cases he's never even been to before. He's going there now to check them out and so on and so forth. Each place that he goes, every city he goes into, he's opening up 6 or 7 or 8 bars in, and each of those bars have 20, 30, 40 staff. Said doesn't say it's hard to get staff right now. He doesn't say that the market's turning. He focuses on what he can control, being a great employer, creating careers for people, creating community bars where he hires local people. He's not flying in ringers from LA and New York and elsewhere. And he's a total outlier. He gets a disproportionate amount of attention from suppliers, from the media, and all that. He doesn't ask for it, but he's just doing cool things and great things. And therefore, he's an outlier. And I can tell you, he makes a lot more money than the average business, and he can scale. He also raises money in a very unique investment strategy that investors come in and invest in 10 or 15 places in one individual bar. So that's an outlier, someone who ignores the rest of the market and at the same time outperforms it by, in some cases, 10 times.
So when you do your, it's the 3-day course, yeah? The 3-day course when you do you got one coming up fairly shortly.
Yeah, we got one coming up. Ali will tell me the date in October. October 27th, everyone arrives, and then it's the 28th and 29th. It's 2.5 days. And I set up these. I used to do them a couple times a year, but they're a ton of work and I travel a lot. So we're only doing it once this year. It'll be about 100 bar and restaurant senior people, general managers up to ownership. And the idea is it's kind of 1/3 education, the best stuff. Like we're bringing in, other speakers other than me are only practitioners. So I've been to a lot of talks, a lot of different shows that I won't mention that have people that have read 5 books on a subject and put it into one little speech and delivered it. I only bring in people that are kicking ass on the subject that they're talking about right now. They're doing it. And so it's about 1/3 education, 1/3 collaboration. So I don't think there's nearly enough of that. So you get put into a group of 6 to 8 people. Kind of, there's a reason I put you into certain groups, and you get to collaborate. You can talk about, there's an exercise about where you're stuck, and you get advice from around the horn, and there's a best practice share, and there's some other cool things. And then there's 1/3 kind of social interaction. We want to be together. We celebrate a couple of different things. We might go out on a huge sailboat and do that. And the idea is that I want you to come here, take away one system that'll change your business, have one idea that you can give to one other person in your business that they can implement, and get 3 people that remain part of your permanent Rolodex, people that you can call on that you now have a relationship with that can help you for the rest of time. So that's why we do it. It's our mastermind at the end of October, and there's still some tickets available for that.
I'll throw the link in the thing as well.
Cool.
You said at the very start exit strategies, and I think I talked to a couple of restaurateurs here in town, and I think I would say like 90% of everybody that goes into the hospitality industry and restaurant business don't ever think it's an exit strategy. It's because they're passionate, or they've got a partner with a chef who's really good at cooking and so on and so forth. No one ever thinks about, okay, how do I retire? And I've got a couple of restaurateurs that is, as a joke, whenever I go into their restaurant, they'll just walk past and put a number down on a piece of paper and slide over to me. It's like, you can have all this if you for that much money. And I'm like, can we just chat about how you're going to get out of here? Because a lot of them are still working the door, paying themselves a minimal salary, which doesn't really reflect very well on the books when you're not really paying yourself properly. Because if you had to hire someone to do that job, that's when you go into the red in the books.
Yeah.
How do you help with exit strategies? Because I think it's just something that doesn't cross people's minds ever correctly and properly when they're setting their business up.
Yeah. So exit strategy is it's an interesting subject to me. Most people don't do it because they don't know when or why they want to exit, or they don't think their business is worth anything. So, why dabble in things that don't have any value? So I'll flip it on the head. I'll give you two of the best pieces of advice that I've ever got as a business owner. One was an advisor that I brought onto my board. And for those of you that don't have an advisory board that run businesses that do over $1 million, you must. There's just no reason not to. It's free, and it'll change your life. So I was courting this one guy to come onto my board, and he asked me a question which I didn't even know how to answer. He said, "Do you own your job or do you own a business?" And I said, "Well, what's the difference?" And he said, "Oh, there's a huge difference." And I said, "Well, then I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I do." And he said, "Well, let me ask this way. If you went away for 10 weeks and gave your company 30 minutes on the phone once a week, would the company be better, the same, or different when you returned?" I said, "It'd be absolutely different. It'd be awful. I think it'd fall apart." And so I took it on as a challenge. And, so I was living in Australia. So Canadian summer holidays were 5 months away. So I had 20 weeks to prepare my business. And he said to me these words: "Prepare your business for sale. Even if you don't want to sell it, just prepare your business for sale." So I took 20 weeks and did that. Then I went to Canada for 10 weeks. And that's a long bit of geography in between. So I tell you, the first week I didn't sleep very well, and my phone didn't ring. They had the landline at the cottage, and no one called. So on Thursday, as agreed, we have this call, half an hour with my leadership team. They had two questions for me. And I said, "Okay, give me the rest." Almost like my ego needed them. The place is falling apart and everything else. Everyone stepped up. The next week, they had three questions. The third week, they were down to two again. The fourth, they were down to one. The fifth week, they didn't have any questions for me. They wrote me and said, "If you're busy, we don't mind skipping the meeting this week. Enjoy your time." That's when I owned a business. And I got back, and things were better. We were similar with revenue and everything else, which was a good thing to drop. They built systems in, they documented things, and they were getting along, and they didn't need me as nearly as much anymore. And the message there is, the more valuable you are to your business, the less valuable your business is. Right? And try to get yourself out of the egotistical, I'm the answers guy, I'm the man when I walk in. There's something beautiful about walking in your venue and someone asks you how your kids are doing, right? And you ask them, is your mom feeling better? And maybe we get around to something that happened last week that we need to address, but it's a beautiful place to be in life. And here's the funny thing. I did that 20 weeks of work. I went away for 10 weeks. 2 weeks after I got back, now my business is ready for sale. I was made an offer on my business.
Wow.
And I sold it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think it is. I've been trying for the last couple of weeks, because I went away for 2 weeks in May. Sort of since May, I've been sort of like trying to figure out, where do I need to fill my team's gaps to do it? Because even though Clive's isn't my business, I still treat it that way. And I do agree. It is one of those things where you want to give away more responsibility to your team, but you're also but you don't want it to be not wanted.
Right.
You don't want them to be completely unnecessarily not needing you anymore. Which is a thing I've been struggling with the last couple of months.
Yeah. Well, if for management that have the knack of doing that can really set a business up to run autonomously, those are the highest paid managers in the industry. If you go to a business owner who's pulling his or her hair out and running in circles and saying, hey, here's what I've done down the road, I'd be snapping that person up overnight. And I'll give you a tip on doing this. We had this whiteboard in the back, and it was we called it business in a box. We're gonna put this business into a box, and everything that went wrong, we wrote it down and thought, what system is missing, or what decision making is missing that we could have avoided this. And then there was a line, and there was a 1/3 of the board that was left open, and that section on the board, we had a shift report every shift that could not be a member of the management team. So it could be a dishwasher, a bartender, a host, anyone but a manager did a shift report. And we did too. We did one front of house and one back of house. And one of the questions on there, given what you saw today on the shift, what one thing do you think we need to improve to make this be a better place to work? And that's where so much of the gold came from. Like people in the trenches, because once you get to a certain level, you get isolated from certain things that are causing people. And we started to chip away at all those things. And as I said, within, I had 20 months to get ready. On week 16, we were good to go. 16 weeks, and we had the business in a box. Tested it for 10 weeks. 2 weeks later, I was offered a number that made a lot of sense.
Wow, it's insane. No, we've talked about outside influences in your restaurant and your bars. Do you see anything challenge-wise coming down the pipeline for bars or restaurants, or do you really think if those fundamentals are being completely tagged, staff are great, you're getting great resumes, that sort of thing? Do you see any challenges coming down in the next 6 to 12 months for the hospitality industry?
I think, especially here in the States, where you've got an election coming up and a lot of uncertainty. But as I said, what I'm certain of is that, if the market does turn dramatically in a negative way, we're going to need more bars or better bars and restaurants. We're going to need a better place to go to, if people are spending less money when they go out or going out less often, they're going to want it to be more meaningful. You're going to want good people to be around. And I think in that, the unique challenge for ownership is why you? Why do you deserve to get the best staff knocking on your door? Why do you deserve to get customers coming through here? And as I said, never look past your team. And if you can be that employer, like I'm working with a client, when I get off this call, I got a coaching call. And what we're working on today is the model that I had with my leadership team. I paid, 10 or 20% more than the average in Sydney for management in that position. So we knew what AGMs made, and we paid a little bit more. But everyone had an uncapped ability to make as much money as they wanted through our bonus structures. And in that, my goal was, and the goal of my entire team was to have our leadership team make twice as much as the rest of the market. Now, I did not achieve that in the 3 years that we tried, but we made 80% more than the average manager in Sydney at the time. And same for the staff. Back of house, we came up with 10 things that we could do above and beyond what everyone else was doing. For example, the guys in the back of house, we had a lot of Thai workers that worked there in Australia in the back of house. And one thing I noticed with their footwear was terrible. Shoes were pieces, just awful, because the dirty or a tough place on shoes. So I said to them, why don't you get new shoes? And they kind of smiled. And one guy said to me, he said, Sean, for the price of a decent pair of boots for the kitchen, I can get all 3 of my kids a new pair of shoes. And I'm going to do that every day of the week. Right. So we said, okay, when you get hired with us, your first day on the counter is a pair of industrial Blundstone boots. And then every year on your anniversary of the company, a new pair of Blundstone boots. Right. So that was one thing. We had English as a second language. We had a teacher that came in every Thursday and helped with programs and write for people. If they wanted to do it, great. If they didn't, that was fine too. On your 1 year anniversary with us, you were given an education budget, which you could apply anywhere you like, so long as you proved that it was going to be a benefit to the business and you're going to teach something back to us. We started bringing in educators every month on things having nothing to do with the restaurant business. How to get your first house in Sydney, the second most expensive market in the world to get a house. Mental health, we address it when we're sick, but if we're feeling okay, how do we go to the next level of okay, right? How do we feel better? Physical health, traveling overseas, all these different educators that we brought in for free because we had thousands of customers and we talked to them, we knew what they did, and we invited them to come in to benefit our staff. So we had 10 things for every department, and that's why we had 20 plus qualified candidates for every opening. If you do these sorts of things, I can guarantee you things get better. And in most cases, you will crush the market, right? You're going to be the only show in town in certain markets when it comes to blowing away your staff, who will in turn blow away your guests.
Yeah, I still think the short-sightedness of a lot of the industry people when it comes to training and certifications. Like for the first year at Clive's, every staff member does Bar Smarts online. We do Edinburgh Whiskey Academy certifications, gin, Irish whiskey, and Scotch, a bourbon certification, 1 year anniversary WSET 1 in spirits, second anniversary WSET 2 in spirits. Then we start talking about specializations, so agave specializations, stuff like that.
Nice.
We shot in February for a refresh, and so one of my kids, he's been with me over 3 years now, Harry, he's like, well, I want to go traveling. I'm like, well, how about I set you a stage up? Where you want to go? He's like, well, I want to go to Milan. I'm like, done. Go do a stage for 4 days at Mobius. He's like, well, I could do a pop-up. I'm like, no pop-ups, no guest shifts. You're going to go and stage with them properly and check out exactly how they do their system. So he did 4, 10, 12-hour days with the Mobius crew, like scrubbing down, cleaning days, that sort of thing. It wasn't like a sugar-coated, fluffy sort of stage. It was a legit, like, chef-style stage. And so that's how come I can say to people, like, the EWA courses are like literally $450 a person for the year for 3 courses. And it's a certification that's on their resume. I've always said that I want to have my team be so educated that they're almost unemployable to anybody else.
Right.
Like, that they want to stay at Clive's because that they continue gaining this education, as they continue gaining this push for career and for personal level, so that their resume is nice and stacked.
Yeah, I love that. And, to your idea about, I love that you sent your guy away and got him that experience. One thing that we encourage our clients to do is, and part of it is they meet at these gatherings in Annapolis, but we also meet online. We do a lot of work in virtually, but to have 2 or 3 other operators that are similar to what you do, a little bit different, you admire some of the things that they do. And then we do these exchange programs where for a week or however many days you decide, and you send an AGM and our AGM goes there, and they do these shadow shifts. And the rules that we encourage are, don't interrupt the flow. Ask your questions on a break and after the shift, but bring your notepad. Be respectful, watch, learn, and listen. And I mean, people come back with like, you won't believe how this works, or this problem we have, they don't have that because, and again, you're going, like, if you're going from Vancouver Island to Sydney or Austin, Texas, or London, England, and all you got to do is arrange a place for this person to stay, and they're going to take care of your guy. Yeah. And hopefully he can walk to work, she can walk to work, and boom, it changes their life. And those people become connected forever too, right? They're building up a professional network, learning and growing. It's an awesome thing. People leave those businesses a lot less than places that don't afford opportunities that can change your life.
How much time have we got left?
It's up to you, man. I've got time.
You got time?
Yeah.
Just check with Ali.
So if you can bring me in a glass of water or something, I appreciate
it. Let's do some questions. So I've been trying to, for the second generation of the podcast, I'm really sort of leveling in a little bit more. To be honest with you, I'm going to be honest with everybody. I use ChatGPT a lot. Not sure how much you use. I literally, like, you type in, I want to do a interview with Sean Finter in Sean Sewell's style for Post Your Podcast. It'll give you a list of questions.
Yeah,
it's amazing. So I want a bit more structure, a little bit less fly by the seat of my pants. For that. So we'll do 5 deep questions that I've sort of been thinking about. What one lesson or experience has shaped your perspective the most in your career, and how do you carry it forward?
That's a good one. I think the big one that helped me, my mental health, was, the maturity in business, where my immaturity was that I was doing 100 hours a week, and I thought that was cool and a badge of honor. And what it was being a thief to everyone that matters to me, not just in the time that I wasn't there, but how I showed up when I was there. And, when I started getting coaching, the coach that I work with helped me understand there is busy, mindless work that we do that comforts us, it numbs us. There is work that needs to get done and you could do it or someone else can do it. And then there's work that only you can do and should do. And he said, if that's over 20 hours a week, you're doing it wrong. You're in the wrong business, right? If it takes you 60 hours to do the basics of your job, then you're not doing it right. So I really started to isolate down to 20 hours a week. And, I'm a guy who could take 20 hours a week and spread it over 60, right? You're mucking around in between tasks, but getting disciplined about the time that I spend on the business and the results I'm getting, and then teaching my leadership team that. When we had 28 offices around the world. So part of my job was helping leaders be more successful. And I got them in the same mindset to say, let's figure out the 3 different types of work that we do and what you should be doing. And it was a game changer for me. And I no longer felt guilty that I wasn't working as much because I was doing mindless work anyways.
I think as passionate hospitality people, we tend to fall into that sort of trap as well. Like I know I talked about it with my therapist. I was like, why do I need to go to work at that time of morning? But it's easy. It's easier for me to get my day started and just start going do, as you said, mindless work instead of going to the gym or spend a little time in here and doing a podcast or something like that. And so I'm sort of now personally reframing a lot of that stuff because I think when you're the boss, it's really easy to fall into that habit of I'll go to work because I'm comfortable. It's easy there. I can do my 9 hours and clock in, clock out, and do that 30% mindless work, 30% you could give it to someone else, 30% only you can do. So I've actually been taking days off and not being at work as much as I have been in the past.
Yeah. And when you do that, Sean, I think that the opposite of what I used to believe is actually true, that I used to feel I was letting people off not being there. And it's showing them that, hey, no one has to be there all the time. Like you need people there that are committed and getting the job done. And if you're able to not be there, then you've done your job or a big part of your job. And let them be successful without you in the room.
Well, I think also it's again post-pandemic. I had high hopes for people to change, the majority of people to change their mentalities towards stuff. So a lot of my team only work 4-day weeks, and so they get 3 days off a week. Being in the hospitality industry, dealing with people for an 8-hour shift or a 9-hour shift is tough enough as it is. So I'm trying to give work-life balance in a way that I never had. And I feel in the hospitality industry, we tend to always fall back on like, well, I did it this way, so they should do it this way. And this old school mentality of like, I did it this way. And without thinking the generation before us generation after us should have it way easier than we had it. And so it should be easier every single generation. It shouldn't still be that 60-hour work mentality and that badge of honor.
Yeah, I agree. And I think on the point with work-life balance, I've never had balance in my entire life. And looking back, sometimes it's off balance by design, but I strive for work-life momentum, right? I want to have a healthy home life and things. So if I got to go on the road for 2 weeks, we've built this beautiful energy and momentum, and I want the same at work. And, so I'm a big believer in getting the energy right, the momentum headed in the right direction. Balance in my view of it was always like I'm at work and then I'm at home and I got to make sure I get more time in each place. But the energy is what really matters to me.
Wow. If you could leave one lasting message or piece of wisdom in the world, what would it be and why?
I would say, a lesson that I learned the hard way at home with watching my dad with his work and lots of clients since is that don't ever underappreciate how important what you do and why you do it is. A friend of mine shared with me a long time ago that, he looks at life in thirds, right? That let's say we're lucky to live till 90 years old. First third of our life is a blur, right? Like my daughter, before all these things happen, I was a kid, I started to become a man. The next third of your life is the prime time of your life, 30 to 60, right? When you become a father, a business owner, or whatever it is that you do. And then from 60 to 90, we never know, right? I'm going to go to Canada in a couple of days to bury my brother-in-law. He's only 3 years older than me. He just lost his battle with cancer. And, I'll be able to stand at his funeral with his children and say, your dad lived a great life. Your dad he's a farmer. He loved what he did. He loved his family and everything else. I'd be so much more heartbroken if I was standing with his children saying, man, it's a shame your dad hated his job for 20 years and did it just for the money.
Hmm.
So I have always loved this industry. There's nothing I love more. We had a gathering here on the property I'm on Saturday night, and three people said to me throughout the day, "You got to slow down. Why are you always serving people? Why?" And I said, just do me a favor and don't ask me to slow down. I am happiest when I'm at the service of others. And I said, if you see me running around sweating, making drinks for people, I was boiling crabs, I was crabbing with the little kids. I see, if you see me doing that, no, I am the happiest I'm ever going to be. Right. And that's what my work was like. And
Hmm.
in addition to that, in parallel with that, I was investing in people just like me, misfits, people that were told their place, people that said, hey, the school system determined you're useless, so you're going to dig ditches. No one believed in me until someone in a restaurant did. And I said, like, I'm that guy now. And that makes my life meaningful. And even the tough years were worth it for me. So I'd say, it's not about loving what you do and you never work a day in your life. I think doing what you love sometimes is very tough, but
Hmm.
you got to feel that it's meaningful and that you're adding value to the world and to other people. And if you do that, I don't think you can lose no matter how much money you make.
Yeah, that's one of my pet peeves when people say you got to slow down, you got to have a better work life. Like my work life balance, I think it's very similar to yours. Like my work life balance is my personal work life balance. It can't be. There shouldn't be a box for work life balance and on what the norm is. There's no definition of whose work life balance is the best.
Right.
It's
Right.
it's it's everybody's personal little journey.
Yeah, and I love the prescribers. I have people like literally have interventions sometimes. They're like, "Hey, dude, you gotta slow down." Ali and I just traveled to our 56th country. I've spoken on stage at 31 countries around the world, and my friends will like sit me down and say, "You got to slow down." And I said, "Do you think Mick Jagger's friends ever say, 'Hey, dude, you're 82 now. You should
Yeah.
slow this thing down?'" It's like, fuck it. I'm happy, and I'm serving others, and I love it. And I'm taking care of my family. You do you. Whatever makes you
Hmm.
happy, I'm going to encourage you to do. If I see you doing something that's making you unhealthy, I'll host the intervention. But
Yeah.
otherwise, let's get
Yeah.
on with it.
I had that from February. Like I was traveling 1 to 2 weeks every month up until like July. And it was like, oh, you've been so busy. You okay? Like you need to relax a little bit. I'm like, nope, I'm going to Mexico and I'm going to I did seven cities in 2 weeks in May. And so like 2 days in Toronto, then on to Ottawa, then back to Toronto to Montreal. And it was a crazy 2 weeks, but it was exactly what I loved doing.
Right.
Looking back on your journey, what is something you wish you had understood earlier in your life?
Oh, that's a good one too. Um, I made a lot of mistakes with people, especially key staff, in that I was very pushy, and I imposed things on them, imposed my goals over top of their goals. And the Peter principle says that we often push and promote people into their level of incompetence. So I'm the knucklehead that took my best bartender and insisted she become the bar manager, and she was miserable and wanted to leave. I took a GM who was amazing and turned him into a partner in the business, and he couldn't handle the stress and he was miserable and wanted to leave. So, it's as I've grown and hopefully matured a little bit, um, I've slowed down and just listened to people and then ask them why. Why is that important? And I never did that before. And sometimes people say things like, because I've just become a mother and
Hmm.
I can't take something new on right now, Sean. Or I'm struggling with the stress that I have, and I might be numbing myself with substance at night too often. And I think if I take any more on right now, it'll be bad for me and my family. And when I started to listen, like I was in tears a lot. Like, fuck, how many times did I not ask why? How many
Hmm.
times did I just tell them what they should do? And that's not my place. My place is to create opportunities and to encourage people and to give them a safe space to move up and to move back if that's what they want to do. And I wish I didn't spend a decade not doing that.
How do you define a success? How do you define success, and has your definition changed over time?
Yeah, it definitely has. My early definition of success was just one word. It was more bars, more money, more staff, more prestige, all just superficial bullshit. Success, it for me, it's very simple. It's having the ability to do the work that I love with people I respect, serving clients that I admire, and having all the time I want for my family. Right. And in order to do that, you do need money. There's no doubt about it. I'm not, I don't have a fancy car. I don't have, I have an old Harley that I love and live a pretty simple life. I've got some nice properties, but other than that, I live a pretty simple life. And even the properties are just part of the retirement strategy. I don't give a shit about anything. I could live in my backpack for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. So I think that the less you need of external vices and toys and everything else, the better off you are. I'm not a slave to anybody. And, one day, we're transitioning, I'm working less and less and doing more and more meaningful work. But when I decide I'm ready to just do something different, I'm blessed that I'm able to do that because I've been smart with my money. And I've also held strong to my beliefs about the work I do and who I work with.
What do you hope your legacy will be?
My kids are my legacy, and I don't care what people think about me now. To be honest, I'm not a guy who reads my own reviews or anything else. And I know I won't care when I'm gone. But I learned the hard way. I was picked on a lot when I was younger, and listened to gossip and everything else. And I could honestly say, like, I try to do good things for people every day, and take care of people and take care of my family. And as long as my kids love me and want to spend time with me, that's all I really care about. And the rest of the internet and whatever else doesn't really matter to me.
And we'll finish everything on a lighter note. What's your go-to cocktail?
Well, that depends on the season. I love nothing more in the summer than I just love just a simple Tanqueray and tonic. I've tried every gin I think that's out there, and there's some great ones. I like Fords, and I like a few different ones. I love a Tanqueray Negroni, and I like a kind of a heavier, like an old fashioned in the winter. I love cigars, so and I love Tommy's Margarita. Out on the boat, I squeeze them fresh on the dock and go out. There's nothing better than surprising people, pulling beautiful little glasses out of the cooler and pouring a beautiful Tommy's Margarita, and maybe get Julio on FaceTime to say hello.
That's awesome. Well, man, I really appreciate this. Like I said in my little pre, I was really nervous, not talking about you, but like it's been 2.5 years since I did the podcast, and I did 350 plus episodes before I hung up my hat in, I think, February 2022. I think I hung up my hat for a bit. So we are like literally 2.5 years since I've done this. And so I wasn't sure if I was going to be still good at it. So I'm glad that I had you as my first guest, because you have you've influenced me for a long time. Like we met, I doubt you even remember, we met years ago when Kit was running things in Toronto. And I did some of your coursework in Toronto years and years ago. Yeah. And so Barmetrics, like Jason in Australia influenced me back in the day as well. So Barmetrics was a big part of my life from 2002. I think 2001, 2002. Yeah. Like
what a trip, man. A business that you start on your kitchen table and to impact people. I never even dreamed to do that. So I'm just delighted to hear that.
I think I interviewed to actually work with Barmetrics at one stage with Jason.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but I was 22 years old. I was a kid. Like I, luckily enough, had worked at a couple of good cocktail bars and won a couple of competitions. So a 22-year-old kid with an ego. And so, and then I think I moved to Canada just shortly after that. So I just want to say thank you so much for sitting down with me. That was an epic episode, but I really appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate you too, man. I'm glad you're back. We need you. I love listening to your podcast. So keep it up, man. I'll be following.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time, man.
All right, brother. Take care.
Appreciate it. Bye. Thanks for listening, Pose Shifters. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. I really enjoy sitting down with friends and peers and just chatting about the industry and getting down to the nuts and bolts of what's really going on out there. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, everything on all the platforms. Just hit it up and I'll do my best to answer any queries or questions you have. I'll see you next week, guys. Bye.